good evening if you're here. It's probably because you're looking for something gentle, something quiet, a voice to drift alongside as sleep slowly comes to meet you. And tonight, I'd like to offer a journey, not to the usual places of screens and schedules, but far away, to another century, another rhythm of life, to a time shaped by wind and wood and the deep hush of snow. Tonight, we'll travel to the Viking world, but not the world of loud battles, flaming ships, or gods with hammers. No, this is the other Viking world, the one of smoke-filled homes, frozen mornings, aching hands, and porridge, a world where glory was rare and survival was enough. So, if you're comfortable, if you've set aside the day's thoughts and allowed yourself to sink into rest, imagine, for a while, that you were there, a figure in the fog, living quietly, simply, endlessly, in the Viking age. Let's begin again. You are waking up, but not to an alarm, and not to sunlight. Here, in the far north, the sun hasn't fully risen in days. A pale gray light filters through the gaps in the timber walls, a kind of dull whisper that signals another day has begun. Your bed is nothing more than straw, flattened over time, its dry stalks poking through a patchwork of old blankets. There's the weight of a hide or two thrown over you, scratchy, heavy, and stiff from last night's frost. You hear the slow, steady breath of someone else sleeping nearby, family, bundled tightly in the same narrow space. There's no privacy, just warmth and bodies. You pull yourself up. Your breath leaves a small cloud in the air. The fire in the center of the longhouse has reduced to embers. It must be fed, and quickly, before the warmth disappears altogether. You wrap a woolen cloak around your shoulders. It smells like smoke and damp grass. Comforting, in a way. You step into rough shoes made of leather, patched again and again, and make your way across the packed earth floor. You crouch by the hearth, stirring the coals gently. The ashes move aside with a whispering sigh. You add a few thin branches, then wait. Everything is done slowly, with purpose, because there is no rush, but there is no rest either. The first task of the day is simple: warmth, then food. You stir a pot left near the coals overnight. Oats, barley, a bit of goat's milk, perhaps a scrap of salted meat if you're lucky. You chew without thinking. The flavor is bland, the texture coarse, but it fills you, and that is enough. Outside, the snow crunches underfoot. You step into it to check the animals. Sheep clustered together, their coats stiff with frost. A cow lowing softly in complaint. A chicken coop mostly silent. Eggs are rare in winter. Screecher is essential. Each must be fed before you are. The day continues in tasks, one bleeding into the next. You haul water from a stream sealed in ice. You gather firewood, your fingers numb even beneath your mittens. You carve wooden pegs to repair a broken tool. You mend a fence that will break again soon. Everything wears down. Everything needs attention. The wind never stops. It pushes against the house, finds the cracks, whispers through the smallest holes. Inside, the light flickers, not from electricity, of course, but from a single tallow candle made from animal fat. Its scent is sharp, a little sour, but familiar. You sit to sew a tunic or weave a length of wool. Your fingers move rhythmically, because they must. Each stitch is a small resistance against the world outside. You speak now and then, but mostly in quiet tones. There's no need to fill the silence. Stories are told in the evenings around the fire, simple tales passed down through memory, sometimes funny, sometimes strange, always slow. In summer, the rhythm changes. You rise earlier, you work longer. The days are full of fishing, planting, harvesting, preserving. Your hands ache in new ways, but the pace never lets up. And still, this is home. You've never seen a city. You've never seen a map. You know the hills near your farm, the smell of wet moss, the rhythm of the seasons. Your world is small, but not meaningless. Here, greatness is not in conquest, it's in endurance. And so you sleep again, wrapped in wool and smoke, dreaming perhaps of a slightly easier winter. Or maybe just dreaming of nothing at all, because tomorrow is the same snow, the same soup, the same slow, quiet survival in the real world of the Vikings. Imagine standing on the frigid shore of Greenland, the cold wind brushing against your face, carrying the distant scent of pine and salt. You hear the steady creak of a long-shipped wooden hull as it gently rocks against the icy waters. On board stands Leif Erikson, not the fierce Viking hero of tales, but a man shaped by patience, observation, and quiet resolve. Leif's story begins around the year 970, a time when the world felt vast and full of unseen places. Born in Iceland and raised in the fledgling Norse colony of Greenland, his childhood was shaped by the relentless cold and the rugged challenges of survival at the edge of the known world. His father, Eric the Red, was a man of fire and exile, whose temper and strength carved a new home in icy lands. Leif, however, bore a gentler spirit, reflective and measured, a listener rather than a shouter. From his youth, Leif was attuned to the natural world, the shifting clouds, the dance of seabirds overhead, the quiet stories told by the stars. He learned to read the sea like a book, understanding its moods and hidden paths. He heard whispers of lands further west, forests untouched, and skies milder than the icy north. When news came of a sailor blown off course, glimpsing woods heavy with grapes, Leif's curiosity deepened. Rather than dismiss these tales as fantasy, he gathered a small, trusted crew. There was no haste in his preparation, only careful packing. Dried meats, sturdy tools, extra sails, and bundles of furs for the cold nights ahead. Their ship was long and slender, carved from oak and pine, designed for steady travel, not battle. The voyage began under a pale sun, moving slowly westward over waves that rose and fell like gentle breaths. The sea was vast and silent, the only sounds the splash of oars and occasional cries of gulls. Days stretched into nights. The salt air mingled with the scent of wet wood and wool. You can almost feel the chill settling into your bones as the ship cut through quiet waters. Each moment a meditation on patience and endurance. Then faint signs of land appeared, driftwood caught in currents, birds circling overhead, the faint scent of green. Leif and his men stepped ashore onto soft moss, surrounded by towering trees whose leaves whispered in the breeze. This land, abundant and wild, they named Vinland, a place of grapes and promise. Their shelters were simple, constructed from timber and hides, a quiet footprint on an untouched shore. The encounters with the native peoples were tentative and respectful, marked by gestures more than words. There were no sweeping conquests, no battles sung in sagas. Instead, a shared space for moments of observation and exchange. Leif's time in Vinland was brief but profound. He studied the land's gifts, the forests, the rivers, the mild climate. Then, with the same calm resolve, he turned his ship homeward, carrying stories rather than spoils. Back in Greenland, Leif became a quiet messenger of a wider world. He introduced Christianity to his people gently, not through force, but through example and soft persuasion. His later years were spent not in warfare or grand halls, but in contemplation, perhaps by the hearth, watching flames flicker and listening to the wind outside. There is no record of grand battles or political intrigue in Leif's life. Instead, his legacy lies in his courage to venture beyond, to seek quietly, and to return with knowledge that expanded the horizon of his people. On cold, quiet nights, perhaps he thought of those distant woods, the gentle rustle of leaves, the soft scent of grapes, the endless expanse of sea he crossed. And in that reflection, a peaceful kind of bravery endures. Let's return to the northern landscape. The morning is misted and still. A low sun glows just above the horizon, filtered through the quiet hush of pine forests. In a clearing by the water, a small gathering prepares for something solemn, a burial among the Vikings. Death was not seen as an abrupt end, but as a quiet departure, a passage towards somewhere unseen, whether it's Valhalla, where warriors might feast forever, or to the calmer fields of Or, perhaps to hell, a distant, cold realm for those who did not die in battle. In every case, the journey continued, and for any journey, one must prepare. Imagine the grave, sometimes carved into the earth, sometimes laid within a boat. The body rests gently, wrapped in woven cloth, surrounded by quiet symbols of life, a comb, a brooch, a favorite blade, a wooden spoon, smooth by years of use. Objects not chosen for their value, but for their meaning. Some Viking burials were set in real ships, majestic vessels placed on land, then covered in soil and stone. These ship burials were rare, often reserved for nobles or figures of spiritual significance. The Oseberg burial, discovered in Norway, is one such example, containing 2 women, along with sledges, textiles, carved animal heads, and ritual tools. Their identity remains uncertain, but the care in their burial speaks volumes. Other graves are simpler, small mounds, ringed with stones. The dead might be cremated, their ashes placed in urns or stone containers, then buried quietly beneath the earth. Sometimes, stone outlines in the shape of ships mark the ground. Long after the vessel and the person are gone, archaeologists uncovered these resting places gently. They sift through soil with fine brushes, revealing beads, tools, even seeds, tiny remnants of lives lived quietly, far from battle, far from conquest. Even in death, the ordinary mattered. A blacksmith might be buried with his hammer and tongs, a woman with keys, symbolizing her role as keeper of the household, children with carved toys or tiny shoes, a soft ache from a world long gone. And sometimes, animals joined them, a dog, a horse, perhaps a falcon. These creatures were not just companions, they were guides, guardians, or simply beloved. In a few rare graves, something more mysterious appears, staffs of iron, often slightly bent. These belonged to seeressses, women of spiritual power known as Valar, buried with their staffs, herbs, and sometimes amulets. They remind us of the quiet threads of magic woven into Norse belief. These graves, large or small, grand or plain, speak with the same voice, a voice not of fear or spectacle, but of remembrance. There is little written ceremony, no grand texts. The stones speak instead, a circle here, a mound there, runes carved in care, saying only, she was loved, or he sailed far. Walking among these burial sites today, There is a stillness that presses gently on the air. You might hear only the wind through the grass or the distant sound of water lapping at a shore. Time feels paused, held gently in place by memory. And those centuries have passed, something remains, a sense of preparation, of farewell, of care. The Vikings lived hard lives, filled with toil, with risk, with hunger and effort. But in death, there was softness, a slowing down, a moment to lay everything down, one item at a time. And perhaps, in this quiet, we glimpse something deeply human, the need to remember, to honor, to send someone onward, not with noise, but with love. A carved pen, a woolen cloak, a boat resting in the earth. Imagine you are no longer in a smoky hut or beside a humble grave. Now you stand before a longhouse, its timber frame broad and weathered, its roof covered in turf and grass. It does not rise sharply or gleam in gold, but it is large, confident, and rooted deep into the land. A soft plume of smoke curls from the top, and somewhere inside, fire crackles low. You've entered the world of the Viking elite. Inside the longhouse, the air is warm but dim. Thick wooden beams creak softly, and woven tapestries mute the chill that seeps in through the walls. The fire glows in the center, not just for warmth, but as the heart of the hall. It flickers against polished drinking horns and soft woolen cloaks, catching on the dull gleam of bronze brooches and the quiet shimmer of silver thread embroidery. This was the domain of the Jarls, the ruling class. Not kings, exactly, though some were, but powerful landowners, ship captains, and clan leaders. Their wealth was not always measured in coins, but in people, land, and oaths, in loyalty. In this life, though more comfortable, brought its own complexities. Their food was richer, honey-sweetened porridge, roasted lamb, aged cheese, but still seasonal, still dependent on the fragile rhythm of the harvest. Their homes were more spacious, yet still dark, still shared with animals in winter. But above all, they lived through presence, being seen at the feast, being heard at the assembly, being remembered in the sagas. In the evenings, the hall filled with soft voices, conversations, riddles, quiet laughter. Bards might sing, their melodies drifting upward into the smoke-darkened rafters. Stories were told, some true, others not all, shaped to honor the line of descent, the weight of the name. Status was worn in details, a finely made belt buckle, a sword with intricate carvings, a fur-lined cloak worn just so. And in a world without mirrors, it was through the gaze of others that your image was known. Among the elite were also the women of the house, powerful in quieter ways. They held the keys, both literally and symbolically, to the supplies, the family lineage, and often to political alliances. A wealthy woman's grave might contain imported silks, Roman glass, or exotic beads, each a sign of trade, connection, prestige. Children in these homes were taught to listen, to memorize stories, to understand lineage, land rights, and subtle customs. A wrong word could cost you standing. A quiet gesture could seal an alliance. And then there were the guests, warriors from across the sea, traders from the east, even monks and scribes taken from distant shores. The longhouse could become a world in itself, a soft, flickering hub of many cultures and quiet exchanges. Outside, the rest of the village worked through mud and snow. But inside, among the rugs and the firelight, a different rhythm played, one of patience, of legacy, of plans made softly over a shared horn of mead. Not all elites were born into their role. Some rose through skill, cunning traders, fearsome captains, while once there, they walked a fine line. Protect your people, but not too harshly. Be generous, but not weak. Keep the old ways, but adapt when the tide turns. It was a kind of quiet performance, a slow game of memory, manners, and measured power. Even their deaths were marked differently. Their bodies might be laid in ship burials, accompanied by servants, animals, and costly items, not for arrogance, but to reflect the life they had lived and the responsibilities they carried. And just like in life, even in death, they were watched, remembered, judged, sung about, not with applause, but with long, slow songs passed from voice to voice. You might never meet these people in battle or in sagas, but in the soft order of their halls, in the scent of beeswax and smoke, in the pattern of their woven cloaks, their presence lingers, a different kind of strength, a quieter kind of legacy, and a deeper kind of stillness. And now, the world of the Vikings fades gently behind you. Not the roaring warriors of pop culture, not the endless battles and axes, but something more tender, a people of silence and rhythm, of long nights, of careful goodbyes. You've walked with the farmers and felt their endless work. You've stood beside warriors at a crossroads in history. You've listened to the dead in their soft arrangements of memory, and you've sat quietly among the powerful, in halls built not just to impress, but to endure. All of it wrapped in cold air, low skies, and quiet firelight. And as you return to the comfort of your own time, you might carry with you not just facts or names or dates, but a sense of stillness, of presence, of the way even the most distant past can settle around you like a warm, heavy blanket. So close your eyes if you haven't already. Let the past drift softly out to sea. And remember, sometimes the quietest stories are the ones that stay. Good night. Thank you for dreaming with us. History doesn't need to shout. Cure it. It only needs to whisper.